What happens when a royal decides not to follow the usual rules of late-night television? What takes place when decades of royal tradition run headfirst into the sharp edge of American comedy? Tonight, we look at the unexpected clash that left viewers stunned as Prince Harry came face-to-face with Stephen Colbert. What began as a regular interview quickly turned into a chaotic moment on live television. Before we unpack this story, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment with your thoughts about what might have really gone on behind the scenes. Late Show studio buzzed with its usual pre-show excitement. Stephen Colbert adjusted his tie and glanced through his notes one last time, while the crew finished their last-minute setups. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, waited in the green room surrounded by his security team. This was not his first time on American TV, but something felt off tonight. The tension in the room could be felt even before the show began. As the familiar opening music echoed through the Ed Sullivan Theater, Colbert launched into his monologue, mixing clever jokes with political observations. The audience laughed at all the expected moments, completely unaware of what was about to happen next. When Colbert finally introduced his guest, the crowd responded with loud cheers. Prince Harry walked out with a calm, confident look, waved to the audience, and sat down across from the host. The interview started smoothly. Colbert, known for his skill in mixing humor with real questions, began with casual topics: Harry's life in California, his charity work, and recent public efforts. Harry answered with ease, delivering just enough personal detail to keep the crowd interested while staying carefully composed. For the first 10 minutes, things went as expected, polite and balanced. But then Colbert switched the tone, as he often does. He steered the conversation toward deeper issues: the role of the monarchy in today's world, talks of reform, and the many controversies that had surrounded the royal family in recent years. Harry's tone became more reserved. His posture subtly shifted as he sat up straighter. The moment of tension came when Colbert, with his usual boldness, asked about the financial side of Harry stepping back from royal duties. Colbert had clearly done his research. He mentioned exact figures about security spending, housing details, and the business efforts launched since Harry and Meghan moved to the U.S. The questions were not aggressive, but they were direct enough to make Harry pause. Harry leaned on his media experience, trying to lighten the moment with a joke about Americans being fascinated by royal expenses. The crowd laughed briefly, but Colbert stayed focused. He followed up with a tough question about how Harry and Meghan balanced their desire for privacy with their involvement in major media deals. The audience began to notice the change in mood. Laughter faded and turned into a quiet, uneasy silence. Then Harry made a move many later called a key misstep. Rather than keeping his calm tone, a hint of irritation slipped through. He questioned whether Colbert truly grasped the full depth of his situation, hinting that the host was simplifying matters far more complex than they appeared on the surface. His tone was not confrontational, but for seasoned viewers it signaled a potentially risky moment ahead. Colbert, no stranger to tense conversations and known for taking on political leaders, was not going to overlook the moment. He leaned in, slightly, his expression shifting from relaxed host to experienced interviewer. He asked Prince Harry to clarify what the public was missing, what layers were hidden from the outside view. The question came with Colbert's usual mix of curiosity and subtle pressure, the same method that helped him earn respect as a top-tier late-night voice. Harry now faced a difficult choice. Going into detail could reveal more than he wanted, but stepping back could seem like he was dodging. Behind the scenes, his team likely sensed that things were veering off their planned course. Still, Harry moved ahead, stating that although American media was thorough, it often overlooked deeper cultural and systemic forces behind royal decisions. Colbert saw an opportunity and took it. With the focus of a veteran journalist, he asked direct questions about those cultural dynamics, the institutional limitations Harry mentioned, and how all that had shaped the prince's choices. On their own, the questions were fair, but together they formed a line of inquiry that felt more intense. The room fell completely silent. Viewers could feel that something unusual, possibly even historic, was happening. Harry's answers started to sound more defensive. He began speaking more quickly, his composed public image starting to slip as he tried to answer Colbert's fast-paced questions, without revealing details he clearly wanted to keep private. Harry referred to conversations and decisions that the general audience could not fully relate to, which added to the confusion and rising tension in the studio. Colbert picked up on these signs right away. Years of interviewing high-profile guests had taught him how to notice when someone was growing uneasy. But instead of softening the moment, he chose to push further. This, after all, was the kind of exchange that made for compelling television. His viewers, he believed, deserved real answers, not rehearsed politeness. Colbert's next question went directly to the core. He asked Prince Harry how he reconciled criticizing media intrusion with actively participating in major media ventures and public appearances. His tone remained calm, but there was a clear firmness that suggested he wanted a genuine answer rather than a carefully crafted one. Harry's face showed a slight flush, something the cameras caught with full clarity. For a moment he seemed to consider his next move, briefly glancing toward the wings where his team stood. When he looked back at Colbert, something in his expression had shifted. The usual controlled royal presence was giving way to something more personal, less polished, perhaps more real but also more unpredictable. His answer came quickly and sharply. He questioned whether Colbert had ever truly felt the level of scrutiny that came from being born in the public spotlight, whether the host could ever fully relate to having every single action examined and judged by people he would never meet. His voice carried a new intensity, and the studio audience shifted uneasily in response. Colbert, however, seemed completely at ease. This was the kind of moment he handled best. He replied with a balance of understanding and pushback, showing why many considered him one of the most skilled interviewers in the country. He admitted that he had never been under that exact kind of pressure, but he also pointed out that many public figures dealt with similar scrutiny, without the benefits of royal status or inherited fortune. The mention of privilege clearly touched a sensitive point. Harry responded with energy and emotion. He argued that privilege brought challenges most people never saw, that for every benefit, there were limits and expectations that could not be measured easily. He talked about the pressure to meet impossible standards and the emotional cost of constant judgment, while at the same time gaining from them the question was delivered with exact focus, aimed right at the contradiction that makes interviews powerful, but also uncomfortable for the person answering. Harry's response showed how strongly it struck him. He leaned in slightly, his tone rising a bit as he explained that being critical and being involved were not opposites, that caring about an institution also meant wanting it to improve, not blindly accepting its faults. His pace quickened, with less of the slow, careful phrasing he used earlier. The host realized he had found the spot that would define the tone of this conversation. He asked Harry to go deeper. What changes did he think were truly needed? What adjustments could solve the issues he pointed out? On the surface, the question was reasonable, but it cornered Harry. Either he had to criticize his own family and their institution directly, or keep things so vague that his earlier claims would feel empty. Harry went for a middle ground that ultimately pleased no one. He spoke about the importance of keeping up with modern times and how systems need to adjust with the world, but he avoided pinpointing clear issues or offering specific solutions. Even viewers who agreed with his perspective felt the answer lacked substance. Colbert's expression made it clear he was not convinced. His next question was simple, but powerful. He asked whether Harry's exit from royal duties was an example of the modernization he had just described, or was it only a personal decision now being shaped to seem bigger? The question left Harry with a tough choice: either say his personal decision was part of a larger reform effort, or admit that his critiques were based mainly on personal experiences, not broader values. What followed was the moment the interview lost its structure. Instead of answering directly, Harry pushed back. He questioned whether Colbert truly wanted to understand his view or was just looking for moments that would spark headlines. That challenge hung heavy in the air, turning a serious discussion into something more personal and more tense. Colbert responded quickly and clearly. He reminded Harry that coming on the show had been his choice. No one made him accept the invite or say the thing she said. The host added that if Harry was not ready to stand by his opinions or answer honest questions, maybe he should not have brought them up on a public stage. By now, the exchange had gone beyond what you normally see on late-night TV. Both men were speaking with a kind of urgency and openness that made it feel less like an interview and more like a private disagreement with an audience watching in real time. Harry's team, watching from offstage, were likely thinking through the impact of every word, while Colbert's producers were probably weighing the raw power of the moment against the risk of completely losing the guests' trust. Harry's next line would be repeated again and again across news outlets and social platforms. He told Colbert that his questions showed exactly the kind of shallow thinking that makes real conversation about these topics so difficult. He argued that American journalism, even with its tough reputation, often missed the deeper, more complex layers of the very topics it claimed to investigate. The remark directly questioned Colbert's professionalism, and the host's reaction showed the calm of someone who'd handled many tough interviews. Asked Harry, without raising his voice, to explain exactly which complexities he thought were being missed, and what important context the viewers needed to fully grasp the matter at hand. Harry found himself stuck. Colbert's simple but precise question left him in a situation where any detailed reply would either bring private family issues into the open or show that his arguments lacked strength. The tension on Harry's face became clearer as he looked for a response that would not worsen his position. His hand movements grew sharper, and his tone carried a sense of urgency that had not been there earlier. Trying to shift the focus, Harry moved the conversation toward broader subjects like the media's role and how public discussion should be handled. Compared real journalism with shows that pretend to inform but are mostly about entertainment, stressing the duty of influential platforms like Colbert's. Still, his comments hinted at a direct critique of the very show he was on, implying it was. Part of the issue he was describing. Colbert's expression changed. The host, who had built a career on thoughtful and informative interviews that also entertained, clearly did not appreciate the suggestion that his work lacked depth. His reply was controlled but firm. He pointed out that Harry had chosen to be on the show and that no one had pushed him to schedule the interview or say the things he now seemed unwilling to stand by. Colbert added that his show had always upheld strong journalistic values while also recognizing its place in entertainment. He noted that Harry appeared to want the advantages of media attention, without accepting the responsibility that came with public statements. This was said with Colbert's usual clarity, getting straight to the ongoing contradiction in the discussion. Harry's reaction showed how far things had unraveled. He accused Colbert of twisting his words, saying the host was taking things out of context to stir up drama. His voice grew louder, and for the first time during the interview, it felt like Harry had stopped, thinking about the audience or the cameras. This was no longer a structured interview. It had turned into a direct clash between two strong personalities. Colbert kept his composure, but his response was firm. He reminded Harry that everything being said was recorded and that viewers would decide whether anything had been taken out of context. He suggested that if Harry felt his message was being misunderstood, maybe the problem was with the message itself, not the questions being asked. That statement hit Harry hard. His face tightened as he leaned forward, pointing at Colbert while speaking. He accused the host of setting him up, of using the interview to make him look bad instead of having a real discussion. Harry's voice shook with real emotion. Ash said this style of confrontation was exactly what was wrong with how American media worked. Colbert's answer became the turning point of the interview. He calmly said that every question had been based on things Harry had publicly said before. He noted that nothing in the interview was off-topic or surprising, given Harry's past statements. The host pointed out that if Harry did not want to talk about his public views, maybe he should not have shared them openly in the first place. That comment seemed to shake something in Harry. He stood up from his chair suddenly, catching the studio audience off guard. He leaned over Colbert's desk, his posture showing anger that he was barely keeping in. When he spoke, his words held a tone of personal bitterness that changed the mood of the whole room. Harry accused Colbert of being a bully who hid behind the title of journalist, saying the host used his platform to embarrass guests instead of inform viewers. He claimed that Colbert's image as a thoughtful interviewer was a well-planned mask hiding a mean-spirited approach. The criticism was personal and unfiltered, crossing the usual lines guests follow on talk shows. For the first time, Colbert's face showed Real surprise. The experienced host had handled difficult interviews before, but rarely had no guest had ever launched such a direct personal attack during a live recording. For a brief moment, Colbert appeared genuinely speechless, his usual quick thinking paused by the unexpected outburst. Still, he quickly regained control, relying on decades of live television experience. His tone remained calm but assertive as he clarified that while disagreement was acceptable, personal insults were out of place. He added that if Harry could not continue the discussion respectfully, it might be better to end the interview early. Harry's response was instant and intense. He accused Colbert of trying to silence him, claiming the threat to stop the interview was a way to shut down opposing views. His voice rose as he argued that this was the same kind of pressure and control he had hoped to avoid by stepping away from royal duties. The irony of his claim seemed completely unnoticed by him. At this point, the interview had fully slipped out of control. Harry kept speaking, his thoughts coming rapidly as he aired frustrations that went far beyond his interaction with Colbert. He spoke of being misunderstood, of having his intentions constantly doubted, and of being judged by standards that changed without reason. Colbert made one last effort to calm the situation, politely asking Harry to sit down so they could continue the conversation in a more productive way. But Harry was no longer interested in resolution. He accused the host of pretending to be respectful while continuing to push aggressively. His distrust was now visible to everyone, and the audience watched in uneasy silence as things worsened. Then came the remark that would mark the end of Harry's appearance. He claimed that Colbert's entire career was based on mocking people more accomplished than him, suggesting that the host's success came from embarrassing his guests instead of offering real insight or talent. The comment was deeply personal and clearly unfair. Even those who had sympathized with Harry earlier found themselves stepping back from his position. Colbert's response was calm but definitive. He thanked Harry for joining, said they would take a commercial break, and motioned to the side of the stage where Harry's security team had already begun moving. The message was clear. Harry's time on the show had ended. Still, Harry was not done. As his team approached, he kept speaking, now sounding genuinely desperate. He accused Colbert of being afraid, of hiding behind commercial breaks and security, instead of addressing real criticism. His voice echoed through the studio as he was calmly guided away. The final scene before the break showed Harry being escorted off stage, still talking, while Colbert remained seated at his desk, visibly puzzled. The stark difference between the host's calm demeanor and the prince's visible distress created a moment that would be replayed and discussed for days. As the studio lights dimmed and the audience sat silently, one thing was clear. Something unusual had just happened. The carefully shaped image Harry had worked to present for years seemed to fall apart in a single disastrous interview, leaving behind questions about his decisions, mindset, and the real person behind the image. What do you think really caused Prince Harry to lose control during this moment? Was it Colbert's questioning or something deeper built up over time? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this one. But Colbert was not done. He continued, asking whether those pressures were enough to explain the choices Harry had made, whether those struggles truly justified the way he had criticized long-standing institutions,